In the spirit of reconciliation, Adobe acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians. Now it's over to the Adobe Education team.
Okay, great. So welcome everybody. I am coming to you today from Wurundjeri land down in the south of Australia, which if I go to the next slide, you can see just there. That's the language, the Wurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nation. That's where I live and work with my family down in Melbourne. So please feel free to go in and share where you're coming from today. I know that Tim is coming to us all the way from Canada. So yes, we are far and wide across the wonderful globe at the moment. Thank you very much for coming today. The session today is really focused around portfolios inside of Adobe Express. We'll have a bit of a chat about why they're useful. I'm framing this for both the K-12 and a TAFE higher education audience. So it's not going to be just focused on one. I'm trying to go in and be a little bit more holistic in this sense, because I think the thing that I've found as I've been working with Adobe across the education space is that the need to go in and present work that goes in and shows a really nice understanding of the core material is absolutely critical, regardless of what level of education you're at. Got a whole bunch from Queensland. Queensland represent. Lovely to see you all today. So thank you very much for coming. So look, my name is Al Briggs. I am a customer success manager with our Adobe education team. My background is that I've been a tertiary educator for over 20 years. Prior to that, I was a graphic designer working in industry using the Adobe tools in industry context. I then taught those tools at university, moved into a learning and teaching role during COVID, and have recently joined the team, as I said, as a customer success manager. So I've used and sort of shared the use of Adobe tools at all different points along the journey, whether it be to people who are going to use them in an industry context, or whether it be for people who are looking at using it inside of their classroom, whether that be a K-12 setting or a higher education setting. So today we will be talking about portfolios. I would love it if you would join along with me and go in and create. There's going to be plenty of time to ask questions. And what I would love to see would be any feedback that you've got or any questions. Don't feel that you have to leave them until the end. Feel free to go in and interrupt. I like to run a noisy classroom, which is always tricky and a little bit confronting when you've got it in an online space. So if you are more comfortable going in and using the chat, please feel free to use the chat. Otherwise, turn your camera on, raise your hand up and just say, hey, Al, I've got a quick question for you. And I'll see if I can go in and answer anything as soon as I possibly can. Okay, so digital portfolios in Adobe Express. As with everything Adobe, there are multiple ways to go in and do these sorts of things. What I'll be looking at today and chatting with you about today is two different ways to go in and do it. One is as a presentation. The other is as an Adobe Express web page. So what's the value of a digital portfolio in that K-12 space? It's a fantastic way to go in and showcase skills and achievements. So allowing students to present their work and accomplishments in a visually appealing and organised manner, making it easier for educational institutions to assess those students' capabilities. It's a great example of that reflective learning practice where as you're going in and actually putting your work together, reflecting on the experience that got you to that final point, or if it's not a final point, if it's you came up against some roadblocks and couldn't quite get it to the level that you wanted, you've got that opportunity to go in and reflect on that and say, well, what I learned from this situation was I needed to change my strategy. I needed to, think a little bit more deeply about my brainstorming, my mind mapping, well, whatever it is. And really that idea of not just identifying areas for improvement, but also identifying the strengths, because I think that's something that quite often gets missed in this process when you're looking at reflective practice. Quite often it can be particularly self-critical, and it's not really framed around that. It is something where you are also going and celebrating the amazing things that you have done. And really the key goal here, and this has been my sort of driving mission for the majority of my education journey, is really enhancing that digital literacy and confidence across all students. So building that digital portfolio in a K-12 space gives you that confidence to use those digital skills when you go out into a university space or when you go out and you start working. And I think that's really one of those amazing things that we do, as I said, sometimes just take for granted, but probably shouldn't. From a TAFE or higher education perspective, it's a great way to go in and track your progress. So to go in and keep that record of skills and knowledge that you're acquiring throughout your studies. And this might be from a individual perspective or like for a particular course, or it might be for an entire program. I had a lot of success with my students when I was teaching graphic design, and Express was in its infancy. At that point, it was called Spark, where we were going in and getting students to, because we were during COVID, we had a little bit of a gap in terms of that ability to go in and share work in a deep and meaningful way a lot of the time. And so getting the students to go in and keep a digital web page sort of journal allowed them to go in and continue that reflective practice whenever and add to it whenever it was a convenient time. So rather than sort of waiting until that 3-hour class on the Tuesday, they had access and the ability to go in and add to that as they needed. And they were using their mobile phones, they were using iPads, they were using whatever device they had sort of handy at that point to go in and do it. And Tim's mentioned in the chat there, use digital portfolios by having students present their terms work and parent-student-teacher interviews. A brilliant idea. It's a fantastic way to go in and share that. And again, that idea of having the students being active participants in that presentation means that they take ownership in that discussion. So it's not just teachers talking to parents about what the kid's doing well or needs to do better. It's about the child actually having that active participant role where they are going in and helping to dictate the narrative, which is really a wonderful thing. And again, all around that idea of building confidence in the student so that when they do move on into either further study or going out into an industry context, that they've got that confidence to be able to go in and express themselves and present their work. Again, in a higher education context, like I said, my background was TAFE, and so very much that idea of continuous improvement and growth is absolutely critical. As I'm sure you would be aware, when you're going in and you're assessing a unit of competency, you have to be able to tick a lot of boxes depending on how complex that unit is, the knowledge evidence, the performance criteria, the performance evidence. You need to be able to go in and justify that. And a portfolio or a reflective learning journal is a brilliant way to go in and capture that. By the time students are graduating, you will have a comprehensive and up-to-date portfolio that reflects all of that academic and personal development. And there's also opportunities within software like Adobe Express to go in and add your own branding sort of components to that. So that idea of going in and actually putting yourself on a page in some ways. Now, if you're doing that for a CV, you probably want to go in and keep it really simple, because a CV, as we know, when you're going in and you're trying to submit a job online, it doesn't need lots of bright, colourful elements on it. It needs to be bullet point, it needs to be precise, so that any of that AI technology that's going in and filtering through those applications can get to the crux of the matter. This is not quite that. This is more around that portfolio that you would present in an interview, or that you would go in and use as an initial prompt when you're going in and engaging out into either industry or applying for further study opportunities. So obviously the key skills are pretty standard for anything where we're talking about that use of the digital tools, where it's about making sure that it's active, relevant learning, that we've got critical thinking and problem solving, potentially collaboration and communication, that idea of application of knowledge and reflective learning practice, and those 21st century skills and real world readiness that we talk about, that we used to call soft skills, and we know they are more than something soft. So that's what we're sort of trying to get to. I'm going to ask if there are any questions that people have at this point. Tim's written in the chat again, besides web pages and presentation mode, I've had students present their digital portfolios using video from Adobe Express. Yeah, and again, brilliant. And video is something that we will be talking about, because there are some new features inside of Express that I think you can probably, as educators, really leverage in that process. So if you have students, for example, who are more comfortable talking than writing, you've got that ability to potentially capture that information in different ways. So when we're going inside of Adobe Express, obviously you are all familiar with the homepage. This is what it looks like. If you're in the K-12 space, it looks slightly different, where you've got a bit more color and a few more things hidden behind the board. But what we're looking to do here is we're going to go in and click on the little blue circle with a plus. We can go down to web page. And again, you can see here, there are actually already templates and things for learning journals or online portfolios. I tend to, when I'm going in and teaching this stuff, start from scratch. More than happy if you want to go in and create from an existing one. It does give you that sort of base framework to work from. I'm going to go in and click on create from scratch. The great thing about using any of these little templates is that they've already been stylized, and I will get to that in a minute when we're talking about themes. But when I click on create from scratch, I get my blank screen. It's grey. It's asking me for 3 bits of information. It's asking me for a title. It's asking me for a subtitle, and it's asking me for a background image. So if we're talking about this as being a digital portfolio, this is where we could go in and literally type in digital portfolio, and then maybe have your name as the subtitle, or vice versa, depending on what you're doing that for. If it's for a subject, the digital portfolio might be changed with, assessment 1 or assessment 2 or capstone project or whatever nomenclature that you're going in and using. I'm going to go in and put in a background image. I'm not going to be agonizing over the images that I'm going in and using here, because that's not what this sort of session is really about. So I'm just going to literally type in portfolio, access all of my Adobe stock information. See, I've got 296,000 images that I could be going in and using, like that one. It's kind of nice and clean. And so once I've got that content in, then it says scroll to start writing your story. Now, what I wanted to do in this is showcase a few of the tips that can help when you're going in and developing up a portfolio. So if you're doing it for an overall graduate portfolio, you might want to go in and just be showcasing a series of projects. If you were doing it for a single subject or for a single assessment, it would obviously just be, contextualized to that particular sort of outcome. There are multiple ways that you can go in and present and divide up your information inside of an Adobe Express web page. The easiest way is to go in and create either a glide show or a split layout. So a split layout will give you half image, half text. So I'm just clicking on the image there to go in and grab another folio image. And you'll see I've got my text sitting over here on the right. And I could continually do that. Just go in and click on the little circle with a plus, make another split layout below, and keep going. That can be a great way to go in and organize the information. And this is where the tips and things sort of start to come in. Sometimes you want to go in and customize your portfolio for a particular. So you might have a complete portfolio of all of the work that you've done at university, and you just want to pull out a few of those key projects. Now, there's multiple ways you could do it. Obviously, if you had created all of your work inside of Adobe Express, which is going to be very highly unlikely, you could access those projects by clicking on the little circle with a plus and clicking on your stuff, and you'll see you've actually got access to all of those files and things that you've included or created before. So this is an example of the webinar slideshow that I just shared with you before. So I could go in and include content that way. But the other thing is that because sometimes you want to go in and remove content and you want to go in and reshuffle and reorganize that content, it can be a little tricky if you're going in and using split layouts. So with a split layout, you can go in and move the element up and down. Yeah. So we've got that ability. But if you wanted to go in and cut content, you would need to click, your little mouse need to go, or your little cursor, just in between the two. So in between the image and the text element. Hang on, I'll do it on this one. You want to go in and click on delete. The issue with the deleting, obviously, is that it's then going to be gone. One of the things that I recommend when I run these workshops with a lot of teachers is that you can go in and actually use it as a glide show. If you create a glide show, you've got a little bit more control in terms of that ability to easily navigate and move content around inside of your portfolio. So yes, you can go in and move split layouts, but if you're going in and you're actually creating it as a glide show, you do have more control over that. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So when I click on a glide show, I'll click on that little circle with a plus, click on glide show. I'm going to go in and just add a few pictures to the background there. So I'll grab a couple of sort of generic baggy looking ones. Okay. When I click on save in the top right-hand corner, that's going to open up these images as a glide show inside of Adobe Express. And with a glide show, we've got a full page image. As I scroll down, you'll see it's just popping in the high resolution version of these photos now. There we go, beautiful. You can see you've got this floating text box that sits here over on the left. I can change the location of that. I can move it to the middle. I can move it over to the right. As I scroll through, I've got the ability to go in and break this up into sections. So this might be something where you're going in and you're either looking at individual projects, you're looking at stages of a project. It might be thumbnails, it might be ideation, it might be brainstorming, it might be critical evaluation. If you need to go in and adjust any of those elements, so if you needed to go in and say just delete a project or go in and just highlight some specific examples, you can literally just click on your background image, click on edit photos, and then you can go in and actually just either move to reorganize that or just delete the image altogether. Which can be quite a useful way to go in and just very quickly adjust and adapt your content. Are there any questions about any of that as we're sort of going through? I'm just mindful of the fact that we're about halfway through the session. So are there any questions? Is this all making sense? Is this making no sense? Silences, yes, Al, this makes sense. Got some thumbs. Thumbs is good. Thank you. Okay, so what we've got now is a basic sort of structure. Yeah. And when you're going in and adding in stuff, you really, it's called a WYSIWYG interface. Yeah. What you see is what you get. You can click on that little circle with a plus and you can go in and add content. Depending on where you are in the document, you can add different content. So you can see here, put a glide show inside of a glide show. It's not like Russian nesting dolls where I can have this infinitely regressing series of glide shows. But I can go in and add in photos. I can add in text. I can create buttons for external links. I can add in GIFs. I can embed videos. And I can also go in and, like I said before, grab stuff. So any content that I've gone in and created inside of Express, see, I've got access to that all over here. So I could go in and actually grab any of that content if this was an example of a piece of work that I'd done. So, here's a thumbnail. I can go in and add that in as an image. And then I could potentially go in and talk about that. So that's where I could do some of that reflective practice. And that's a fantastic way to go in and do it. the other advantage of going in and using a web page like this is that if you've got students doing situational learning, so if they're doing work integrated learning, if they're on an excursion or something like that, and again, this is obviously directed more towards that higher education student cohort than K-12, because K-12 students can't use mobile phones. You can go in and use your mobile phone to go in and capture some of that content. And we've had some fantastic examples of students teachers going in and doing that, with their students doing nursing rounds, and with trade students going in and when they're doing their apprenticeships, actually going in and taking photos on site and being able to do that reflective process on site rather than having to bring it back to the classroom, think about what they're actually covering off on, and then, try and remember what they did days, weeks ago. So it's a really nice way to go in and keep that that recency. So you're actually working at that point that you need to be working. The limitation there at this stage is really, as far as video goes, going in and recording video content. So what I would be recommending, and this is where we were talking before when Tim shared that getting students to go in and present digital portfolios using video, there are some fantastic ways you can go in and use video inside of Adobe Express. I know that I'm jumping around a little bit here, and that's primarily because I wanted to go in and try and cover off on both presentation and web page. So if you are feeling a little lost, if you're feeling like I'm jumping around a little bit too much with the Adobe Express web page, yeah, well, I've got that. How do I then go in and share it? You can share it by clicking on the little blue button in the top right-hand corner. You can go in and click on Invite Collaborators, and so people can go in and share that. You can also then go in and publish it to the web. Where this can be really useful for educators is if you want to go in and create a template for students to be able to go in and use, you can go in and create that file. So you could go in and have all of the prompts. It might be all of the questions for the assessment, or it might be just glideshow pages for each of those components that they're going to be potentially adding into their portfolio. So then it's just a plug and play for them. If you click on this Allow Others to Remix slider, it means that anybody who goes in and accesses this file will see a preview window of it. They'll see it, and there'll be a little blue button in the top right-hand corner that says Remix This. When they click on that, it will actually go in and open up a brand new duplicated copy of that template inside of their own account, which means you're not sharing the live active working file with students. You're giving them an opportunity to go in and create that fantastic example with as much content as is required. And that's where, depending on your student level that you're pitching this at, if it's in a K-12 setting, you can get very, very prescriptive with what you're including inside of there. So it's just a case of them going in and dropping in that image that they might need, or doing that reflection, writing a sentence or two. You're taking some of that hard work out of the situation by just giving them a really nice framework. It's not a worksheet, but it is going in and giving them that scaffolded piece of design that they can then go in and flesh out with their own content. Said in the chat, adding buttons for external links is useful. Yeah, look, I think links within an Express web page are absolutely key. If you need to go in and very quickly share out some sort of content, you can literally click on that circle, click on the button. The button's going to ask you for two things. It's going to ask you for what you want the button to say and what you want the button to do. And that's where you could go in and you could publish out. If you have to do proper Harvard referencing or something like that, you could actually get your referencing all sorted in that fashion. So that's web pages. As far as presentations go, I'm just going to quickly jump in and show you a presentation. So again, I can do a presentation by clicking on the blue button from the home page. And I could go in under Document. I can scroll down to where it says Presentation. Or because there's always 5,000 different ways to do things in Adobe products. Because I've done presentations recently, I've got under this little more ways to start option here. I've got presentation sitting there, or I could literally just click into the search bar and type in presentation. So when I type in presentation, you'll see the interface is a little bit different. This is what the Adobe Express interface looks like for everything other than a web page. And what that is you've got your working area here, you've got your options sitting over here on the left, you've got your publishing and sharing options sitting at the top there, and then you've got a contextual menu that will change depending on what tool or what element you have active. So because I've just opened up a blank one, it's giving me suggestions for presentation templates. The reason I like presentation is that presentation also gives you this present mode, which is what we were in when I opened this the very first time. What that does is it takes you into a full screen presentation, and you've actually got the ability as per PowerPoint to go in and have presenter notes on one screen and your presentation on another screen. So if you're using this as an educator to go in and share content with your students, fantastic, really easy way to go in and share that content. The other great thing, obviously, about the presentation is that you can go in and share that. You can share that by going in and making a view-only link, which means that people don't actually need to have access to Adobe Express to be able to go in and see it. So unlike a PowerPoint file, where if you're going in and sharing your PowerPoint, they need to have PowerPoint to be able to go in and open it. You can go in and share that really easily. You can even go in and download it as a PDF, as a JPEG, as a PNG, or if you've got video content in there, you can actually even save it out as a video. So the great thing about this presentation format is you've got all of the ability to do everything else that you can do inside of Adobe Express, like make video, like capture audio, like go in and use generative AI to create graphics and design elements. But you've also got this present mode, which gives you that extra level to be able to go in and share that with a wider audience. So if I were going in and creating content, I'm actually not going to jump into this one. I'll jump into my actual one that I've been presenting today, which is this Wednesday webinar. And this is one of the cool tools that's come in. So if you were looking at potentially putting a digital portfolio together and you're looking at presenting your work, or you're looking at talking about your work, again, some people are much more comfortable not writing. Some people are more comfortable going in and talking about their work, or some people are more comfortable going in and having a picture of themselves going in and actually talking about their work. Some people are not. Some people would prefer to write. So if you go in and you give those multiple options, you can really target a wider audience and have a more effective outcome, I think. So what I'm going to do is show you if I wanted to go in, and this is one of the new features that's just come in recently in Adobe Express. If I click on my media tab over here, media is where I would go to grab in any photos or video or audio components that I want to go in and add into my project. Now, you'll notice at the moment, this is static. It's got some text, it's got an image. It doesn't have a timeline, so it's not a video. It's just a static, single moment in time piece of design. With all of these elements, I can go in and include things like animation. And as soon as I go in and click on animation, you'll see I can roll my mouse over one of the animations to see what's going to happen there. I've got control over what that will do. My background is as a graphic designer, so my general process with this stuff is to keep it simple. I would generally recommend you don't need to go in and animate things unless it's going to add something. If you need to have that extra level of interest, or if you need to go in and direct the viewer's eyes across the page, going in and using that sort of stuff can work really well. As you move forward in the education sphere, it becomes less critical to have bells and whistles like that. It can be a bit of fun for kids to be going in and putting a presentation together, but it's probably unnecessary for an industry portfolio, again, unless it's really adding to the content that you're trying to showcase. So look, the reason I show you the animation is essentially as soon as you go in and include an animation component, you have this little option here now where you've actually got a timeline on that page. So I can actually go in and I can start to play with some of those little components inside of there. And because I have that ability to go in and add motion, I can also add video. And when I add video, in the same way that you could potentially add video to a PowerPoint slide deck, if I go in and add in a video by clicking on my media, clicking on videos, you'll see there I've got the ability here to not only access all of this content through Adobe Stock or to upload any of the content that I've got on my computer. If I'm on my mobile phone, I could also go in and grab anything from my photo album or take a photo directly or video. But I can also go in and click on this record yourself option. And when I do that, you'll see when you're done your recording, you'll be able to remove your background, add effects, edit your video. Can you see how there's just this little picture of me sitting down there in the bottom right-hand corner? That's using my camera. So the same camera that I'm using for this particular one. I could move that to the bottom right side of the screen if I wanted to. Yep. And so I could then potentially be going in and pointing around and saying, yep, there's this element here is what we were talking about. I could go in and be a talking head. So if you were using this for your portfolio, it might be a case where you're going in and reflecting on the highlights and lowlights, the things that worked really well, the things that didn't work well. And again, particularly in a higher education context, that ability to go in and really demonstrate that learning, being able to go in and talk about what worked, what didn't work, and how you can apply that knowledge is absolutely critical. And it's a fantastic way to go in and capture it. That's maybe going to be a little bit less confrontational than the traditional old method of the students standing in front of an entire class going in and presenting their work. Giving them that confidence to go in and build up that skill can work really nicely. And you'll see here, if I click on the start recording, it'll give me a 3-second countdown. And then it's just going to go in and start the recording. I can go in and do whatever I want inside of that at that stage. I'm just going to click on stop now. And as soon as I've done that, I can click on save recording. I can remove that. I can put it anywhere I want. And then I've got all of those abilities where I can go in and do things like I can remove backgrounds. I can go in and fill video. So I could go in and make it full page if I want to go in and make it full page, which I don't because I'm not looking at my own head. I can even go in and do things like enhance the speech. So you don't have to be in a sound booth with $300,000 worth of recording equipment to go in and create an actual solid, strong video here. You can click on enhance speech. And to give you an example, my son is in the next room in the house playing on the PlayStation 5 and making a fair bit of noise. You may not be able to hear that. You may be able to hear that. If you can hear that, I do apologize. But I could go in and use the enhanced speech filter to go in and cut some of that noise out. And again, I think this is it's a really nice way to go in and very quickly give that extra level inside of a portfolio. And it might be something that you look at going in and removing for particular situations. So if you're looking at this for assessment, this might be something where the teacher is requiring that feedback process or requiring that self-reflective practice. What you can also then do is just remove that video for your final published outcome. And you can do that a couple of ways. You could go and do that by just literally clicking down here, duplicating the page, and then removing the element. Or you can go in and duplicate the entire file and then have your sort of your working file and your actual final submission outputs. Are there any questions about any of that? So I think the thing that I really would like for you to have as a takeaway from this session is the fact that getting students, regardless of level, or educators, regardless of level, being able to put their content together in ways that can be accessed easily, that can be added to even more easily, but that can be adapted depending on that outcome is really important. I think when we're talking about this idea of digital fluency, we know that students need to be comfortable with these tools. We know that educators in particular need to be comfortable with these tools because these tools are changing so incredibly quickly. Um, 2 years ago, when ChatGPT was sort of first raising its head in the education sphere, we were sitting there thinking about what's it all going to mean. And when you think about how far it's developed, just in the last 6 months, even, the fact that you've now got text to video, that's a possibility. Video is going to make things significantly different. But from an education perspective, because we've got to be safe and we've got to be responsible, we also have that onus and that incentive to be doing it right for the kids, because the kids will be looking at the tools that parents are using, or that the adults are using, or that people out in industry are using, and they're going to need some guidance there. And I think it's one of those rare times where we've got a really interesting connection between industry and education. Go in and really drive this conversation in the right ways, because these tools can open up a world of possibilities for students and teachers, but it needs to be done right. You need to know that there are things that are acceptable and there are things that aren't acceptable, that you can't go in and just use somebody else's content. And so Adobe has built into all of their products, but in particular Express, some really important railguards and safety features that mean that students can't go in and generate Marvel designs, or they can't go in and have an image of Donald Trump drinking a can of Coke on the beach, because Adobe doesn't own the rights to any of those images, and the students shouldn't be going in and creating images that they don't have the rights to, because they'll get in all sorts of issues when they're moving out into the real world. So I think that idea of having an ethical, responsible, and safe generative AI model that underpins it is a really key component as we move forward. I'd be more really interested to get some of your feedback or ideas in that space, if there's anything that anybody would like to share in that space. That's probably a little bit too presumptive to be going in and just saying, yeah, go in and tell me everything that you know about this. Look, we're coming to time. There's about 5 minutes to go. So hopefully what I've been able to go in and show you is just a couple of quick ways to go in and create those pieces of content. Again, if you want to go in and share it, so in the same way that we had that allow others to remix slider when we went and published out our webpage, we can also do that through here. So if I click on share, I can go in and click on make a template, or I can click on a view only link. And if I click on a view only link and do the allow others to use this, it gives them the ability to look at it without having to log into Express. But then if they do want to go in and see it, I'll show you what that looks like. They can see it through that create link. So I'm just going to very, very quickly copy this out. And of course, because I said I'll do it very quickly, my son's internet usage is going to be slowing down all of my process. But so what this is now doing is it's actually publishing it out. And with that, allow others to use this. When that file link comes up, you'll actually be able to go in and see. You'll be actually be able to go in and create your own version of it. So you can use that as a template. I do this a lot because if I'm delivering multiple Wednesday webinars, I can go in and use that template and then start. So I'm not always starting from scratch when I'm going in and sort of working through. While that's saving in the background, I'm just going to go in and move that to there for a second. We do have a very sort of special Wednesday webinar coming up next week, which is focusing on transforming curriculum with creative campus innovators. This is framed around higher education. So I think if you are a K-12 audience here, please keep in mind that this is what we're working on with higher education institutions. And so knowing how higher education is using these digital tools to go in and transform curriculum can help to get different levels, the K-12 space, onto that same page so that you know what is happening as we're moving forward. And we've got 13 wonderful partner universities around Australia now who are Adobe Creative Campuses. And so we're bringing academics in from Swinburne, from TAFE New South Wales, from Curtin University and Queensland University of Technology. So we've covered 4 states there to learn how they're transforming curriculum design by utilising Adobe tools. You will always, as you would know, if you've been to a Wednesday webinar before, you would have all of the details that you can go in and register through the Wednesday webinar website. But if you want to grab your mobile phone out, I'll take this one up for a second, because that will go in and give you a direct registration to Teams. It will go for a little bit longer. So next week, that is actually designed to go from 4 till 5:15. And that's going to be just a really nice, quick snippet of about 4 or 5 educators who are just spending about 10 minutes talking about how they're using tools like Adobe Express in their learning and teaching process. So you can see some of the strategies they're using and the practical applications. What we're really excited about is to see the spaces where it's not necessarily considered to be a traditional sort of output. So, we know that if you want to go in and create an image, or you want to go in and adjust a photo, that Photoshop is going to be a tool that you're going to go in and use. But we're finding students going in and studying history and going in and putting infographics together. It's a wonderful way. We're finding science students and medical students going in and planning out things, or looking at body systems, or how different systems interact with each other. Using some of these tools has been absolutely critical in coming up with some really innovative, forward-looking strategies. As always, our Adobe ANZ, Adobe for Education site, you can go in and check and see all of the latest, adobeanzedu.com, and I'll put that into the chat.